So I actually caught this Joe Rogan video over on the Secular Talk subreddit, so shout out to them. But in this video clip, you're going to see Joe Rogan with another one of his kook guests. I don't even know where he finds these guests, honestly. It seems like he's just on a goal, especially now that he's in Texas. It's harder to get, actually like good guests. So you kind of have to pull from like crazy people. But he just kind of gets on like fringe crazy people, like whether it be doctors who are like the one doctor who believe that masks don't work and says, hey, like go to my website and cop my vitamins at $60 a bottle. So, this seems to be another one of those guys. But he's going to say that California is pretty close to George Orwell's book 1984 and what he described in it. Check it out.
People's Republic of California.
Yeah, exactly so.
Yeah, it's an interesting turn of events. California has become a strange new place.
Yes, it has.
Almost unrecognizable.
Yes. Well, it'd be recognizable to George Orwell.
Well, yeah, right? Even he probably been like, wow. He was probably, if you could get George Orwell from, the time he wrote 1980, when did he write 84?
Oh, that's pretty good. I don't know. I think it was the late 40s. We can look it up.
And then to see that, in 2022, he was in the neighborhood. He definitely was pretty close.
He was off like 1.2%.
There it is, 49.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
George Orwell said he was.
So there are quite a few things to say about this, but I wanted to actually start this out because it's important that as I can get this out to as many people as possible. George Orwell was a leftist. George Orwell was actually left-wing. George Orwell was not a left-winger like Bernie Sanders. He was a left-winger as in a socialist. He was a democratic socialist who was against capitalism. Okay, he only supported democratic socialism. He supported democratic socialism so much, he actually fought in Catalonia with the Revolutionary Army, the anarchist army, to fight against the fascists. And his stuff that he wrote, against, Stalin and Stalinism and that kind of stuff, was because he was a democratic socialist and not a Stalinist or, one of the, dictatorship of the proletariat kind of people. He was a democratic socialist, which means you believe in workers owning the means of production alongside, a direct democratic government system. So George Orwell was not a right-winger or any of that kind. He did not support any of that stuff. He was a left-winger. And not only was he a left-winger, he was a socialist. We're not talking about social democracy here. When we're talking about democratic socialism, we're talking about the workers owning the means of productions in society. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about capitalism alongside a strong welfare state with maybe some worker ownership. We're talking about actual, bona fide, real democratic socialism. So George Orwell constantly gets painted this way. And, his stuff against Stalinism is very legit and all of that stuff, of course. But it's also an important point that nobody brings up and nobody seems to know. Some of you guys are going to know, and definitely let me know down below how many of you guys knew this because I'm curious. There's going to be definitely some of you guys who know this because you guys are, obviously political left-wing buffs yourselves. I'm not a socialist, obviously. I'm in the Bernie Sanders camp of social democracy. George Orwell was an actual left-winger. Like, Bernie Sanders isn't really a left-winger in terms of a political spectrum. He's more center, okay? George Orwell is actually a socialist, an actual left-winger. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out there first. But, Joe Rogan, he used California to boost his career, able to get all the guests, enjoyed the area. And then I guess he secured his $100 million bag and he decided to leave. And now he's just shit-talking it. It's very weird to see because he obviously heavily benefited from California. So it's just very corny to see. And seeing people act like California is some kind of, whether it be like California or 1984, I just don't really know where it comes from. I mean, the idea that California is California is just a great example of, essentially liberalism in terms of not even being like a full-on social democracy, but, this state just ran a huge surplus, a ginormous, like 40 billion surplus. and like an 80 billion surplus over 2 years. So it's running a surplus. It's like one of the biggest. It's bigger than a lot of countries. Like I think it's bigger than France's entire economy, the GDP. So it's very capitalist, right? It's a very capitalist state. It's not communist in any way, and it's running better than a lot of these other countries. Has a bigger economy, runs an actual budget surplus. So all of this kind of stuff. A lot of the other states are kind of like are the ones who are relying more on welfare but don't contribute and are talking shit about it at the same time. Also, there are things like anti-BDS bills where, you can't sign federal contracts without pledging your support to Israel. So, they don't really care about free speech on that realm either. They just, only care about it if it's something loosely attached or, combined with the left wing. I haven't seen Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro say anything about that.